a song of a love that is gone. A song of a love that is gone.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaylee and today's video is all about the amazing episode 3 from season 6 of Outlander. Now, no doubt everybody has finally seen it. Australia is so behind with the releases of this. So where I am, it doesn't come out until 9 p.m. on Monday evening, which is it just drags it out. It's not fair. You got to avoid spoilers and all that jazz. But I finally got to watch it and oh man, wasn't it such a great episode. They are putting so much from this book onto screen that it is really it is really ticking all of my book loving boxes for this season. I am absolutely loving it. I mean, I know that does also then lead us to the part where, well, book readers aren't getting much surprises or too many surprises, but I'm okay with that because we know there is a lot of stuff happening in this season and already up to, like, we're 3 episodes in and we are a lot of information sort of happening. Like, we are a lot of the way through the book. So I'm really, really loving it. And I'm loving that they're getting straight to the point on so many different storylines. They're not sort of just like pussyfooting around it. They're not, you know, doing a little bit here, a little bit there. We are really digging deep on some of the crucial storylines for this season. Jumping off straight into this episode, we see Henry Christian in the basket going down the river. Now, this is such a crazy scene. There was my only little bit of that was a bit weird was the CGI of the basket actually falling over the waterfall. I thought we were a little bit higher up in production value. That CGI of that just looked absolutely shocking. I wasn't a fan of that, but that's my only criticism about that entire scene. It was fantastic. And watching Roger at the end yelling at the boys like he's really coming into his own, that real dominant sort of no, this is naughty, come on now. Like, he really did show his I don't want to say force, but he really did impress me a lot with the way he handled the boys who had put young Henry Christian into the basket. I thought that was really good, and it was such a great scene that we all knew was coming if you're a book reader, but it was so good to see on screen.
No! It's Mr. Mackenzie!
Will you dare run?
Now, throughout the episode, we obviously know that Fergus is still suffering some deep turmoil and everything that's going on with Fergus and Masali. Now, when I was reading the books, I really didn't feel bad for Fergus. I was sort of like, suck it up, mate. Like, you're a dad and you need to do your job. But watching it on screen, I definitely feel a lot more heartache for Fergus. I think I have more of an understanding of where he was coming from, seeing it on screen as opposed to when I read it in the book, and seeing the moment with Fergus and Claire talking about everything that's going on, and, you know, Claire explaining that nothing is ever going to happen to Henry Christian while they're alive, and Fergus is like, well, one day we're all going to die and he's going to be left to fend for himself. Like, you know, we're not all going to be here forever. And it really hit home that, that's so true. One day, you know, in their minds and all that, you know, he'll be alone and they won't be there to protect him. So it was definitely a nice kick in the reality guts for myself in regards to this storyline. Because even before this season aired, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, Fergus has got a lot going on this year. And now it's definitely coming across a lot better than what I think it did in the book. I really did enjoy the scene with Fergus, and getting to have him have a lot more lines and a lot more sort of dialect in this whole episode was fantastic, because we haven't seen much of that going on in the last, well, season-ish, roughly. You know what I mean? Like, he has a lot to say in this episode, and I think that is really good.
In villages of France, a dwarf child would be left for the wolves.
Don't let that happen here. We'll surround Henri Christian with love.
Throughout this episode, we also see that Brie has been very busy creating and making things. We have the spinning wheel, and we also know that Jem has his toy car, which he is predominantly calling the Vroom. I absolutely love this. I mean, we know that Brie is so talented and she's creating different things sort of in every episode. We have a new sort of creation appearing. I am starting to get a little bit worried because it's like, we've created a lot in a small span of space, and I don't know, I'm still undecided if there's going to be a change in this season where something is created and people are like, are you a witch, Brie? Like, we're sort of, I don't know, I feel like we're going to have some deviation from the book. I feel that's going to happen and that's going to appear sort of at the end of this season. I'm really interested to know in what aspect that might come from, though. Like, will it be about Brie or Claire or Jamie? Like, what part of it is going to be different? And I might be completely wrong. We might not have any difference. This might be the season that is directly dictated to the book. But I'm not quite sure about that.
Hey, no more fighting or no more room until tomorrow. Yes?
Another loving scene in this episode was when Jamie has rounded up all the young boys who were, putting Henry Christian into the basket at the start of the episode. And he is teaching them a very good life lesson here. Now, initially, when you're watching the episode, you think, oh, they are in so much trouble. But of course, it's Jamie, so we know it's not going to be harsh or unjust or cruel in any way, shape, or form. And he does give them the option to either touch him or touch a hot poker, as they believed that if they were to actually touch him, they would burn. Clearly, none of the boys burn, and they all get that understanding that, he's not dangerous, he's loving and caring, and he's just a baby boy. I love this scene, and I love that at the very end of it, instead of going, okay, now get out, you've learnt your lesson, it's take some bread and honey, boys, and be on your way. He melts my heart, Jamie. I'm sure he melts everybody's heart. We know everybody loves him that watches this show, but to see it, it's very cool. Amongst that, though, when we were watching it, we were talking about how old, he's grandpa Jamie now, and I mean, we know he's been grandpa for a while, but isn't it weird to see it happening now? Like, especially if you've done a rewatch very recently and it's like we had young Jamie in season 1, and I know we've watched the years go on, but to now be like surrounded by little kids who are all like grandpa, and it's just, I don't know, it's a new level of heartstrings I think we've found for this season.
I mean, to learn by doing. There's a choice. Touch the bairn or the poker. Help yourself to bread and honey and be on your way. He needs your protection. You understand?
Yes, Grandpa.
Tom, Christie, and Mulva do not escape this episode, of course. Tom is now very much on the grand idea that he will have the operation, and he does arrive to Claire's surgery to, in fact, have the operation. Being a stubborn man, he also says that he will not be taking the ether and that he will just roll with it and say his prayers while the operation is happening. Jamie is, of course, there to, I'm going to say, control the situation and, obviously help, but also to, make sure that he doesn't sort of squirm, and he's there to help, but it's very interesting to see the dynamic still with them. All credit to Tom Christie, who sat through it, and I mean, I would have passed out, and got his hand operated on without anesthetic, which clearly, you know what I mean, and without ether, without anything. He's a bit of he's a brave character, good old Tom Christie. We know he's a bit cruel as well, and very much stuck in his ways, but he definitely is a tough character. Very, very tough.
Prepare the surgery and the ether.
Ether? I have agreed to the operation, but I will not allow you to employ your potions upon me.
The right hand of the Lord is exalted.
Aye.
The right hand of the Lord doeth valiantly.
No, that's appropriate, no?
Go on.
Now, of course, throughout this, though, whilst he's having the operation, we, of course, know that Mulva is lurking around as she does. I definitely, even though if you haven't read the books, you are definitely, surely picking up creepy Mulva vibes with her peering through the window and just sort of always being in the background and always being there when she probably shouldn't be. We then see her, of course, also have a fairly lovey conversation with young Ian, and I'm pretty sure we know where that's going to lead, but I'm going to wait to see if it's actually said and played out before I go too much into my theories on what's going to happen there. I mean, again, if they stick to the books, we know what's going to happen. Well, I know what's going to happen, and I don't know if I want to blurt that out in case it's the thing that's changed, but it was very clear that there was some happy, lovey vibes going on between those two in their private conversations.
She called me her apprentice.
That's why you've been hopping in about here all the time. Is it no?
Do they mean something?
Something else that I found very interesting in this episode, and I think I did touch on it last week, is the fact that Claire's ether usage is already starting to slow down. Now, we know that she clearly wanted to use it, but Tom Christie was in her surgery at the time, and so she didn't use it, and she went sort of towards she's now going to start reading when she can't sleep and things like that. In last week's video, I did say I truly believe that Claire is not going to be addicted to ether, and then in the comment section on that video, I was actually informed that ether isn't actually addictive. So that was, I mean, this is what I mean. I love our comment section here on the channel because I get taught so much as well. So again, I'm really sticking with that theory that she's not going to be addicted to it in any way, shape or form. And we're already starting to see that sort of phased out, which I'm sure the internet forums of Outlander world will be pleased about, because we know there were many people that were not impressed that she was using ether. But I found it really interesting that in this episode, it definitely started to be phased out, in my opinion. We do see that Tom and Claire's relationship does take a little bit of a step back. I mean, I feel like after the operation and after everything that had happened with his hand and everything, Tom definitely was starting to see Claire in a better light, and he does say openly, I don't think you're a witch, even though, you know, people on the ridge think you are. I'm a much more educated man than that. I do not believe that at all, that you are a witch. He believes witches are real, obviously his wife or ex-wife or whatever. But yeah, he says he's a very educated man, and he realizes that Claire is not a witch. Their relationship was definitely getting better because we know they butt heads a fair bit, until Claire lent him a book and it was returned with a little note saying how it was filth and he thought better of her. She, of course, Claire, gets a little grin and I find that funny because in my mind their relationship is still okay, but it does definitely put it a little bit more on rocky grounds. And then, of course, we see that Tom Christie, now that his hand is much better and he's able to hold a strap, goes back to giving Mulva a thrashing. It definitely plays out that he's certainly, in some aspects, very good. And look, I don't mind Tom Christie too much, I must admit. But then we see that side of Tom Christie where he's thrashing his daughter, and he's just, that's not cool, Tom. Like, that's, Tom, come on now. I'm not a fan of that part of you. But I do love certain aspects of him. I love his loyalty to his beliefs, and I love his accent. I mean, there are certain things about Tom Christie that you are going to grow to love, I think. It depends where you sort of sit. But for me, I grow to love him a little bit more slowly. Very, very slowly. As we go back to the Fergus and Masali sort of drama that's happening, and I'm so sorry, by the way, because I get roasted for the way I say Masali. Now, I know people will, every episode, every time I mention her name, I get a comment with how I say it wrong, and I'm sorry, but it's just how I do it. So I'm really sorry, but I'm going to stick with it because it just comes out of my mouth. But their drama definitely jumps up a notch when we see Fergus attempt to commit suicide by cutting his wrists. This is a very, very difficult scene to watch, so I'm sorry, I probably should have put a trigger warning in. But of course, Jamie is there to save the day and explains to Fergus that he is most certainly needed in life. He is the one that's going to teach his children the lessons of a father, and it's just, you know, it's such a touching scene, and I'm so glad that it was played out the way it was on screen, because like I said, in the books, I feel less sorry for Fergus than what I do in the TV series. So, I mean, the way it was played out, they did it very well, and it was very confronting, and it was very much put up to how much Fergus is actually suffering mentally, and you get more of an appreciation for what's happening in his own mind and in his life, I guess.
Fergus!
The episode closes out with the guns arriving, and we definitely have that ominous scene that was in most of the previews that it's happening. The Boston Tea Party has officially happened, and the storm is almost there, and it is definitely just a couple of days away, sort of thing. Like it's coming. It's just so scarily close that it's all about to break loose. I am very excited to see how they portray the next couple of episodes, because already, I mean, 3 episodes in, we're nearly at the halfway point. That's insane. I mean, it's absolutely insane. It feels like it just started yesterday. But I truly am absolutely loving this season, and I would love to know what your favourite part about this season has been so far. Oh, and this episode, because I mean, every episode you get something new and improved and something that you love, or something that you don't like. I mean, I will never belittle anyone if you don't like an episode. Of course, please also put that down in the comments below. That is everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I mean, everyone has different tastes, but I personally am absolutely loving this episode. On a different note, is anybody going to the Highlander gathering? I think it's called the Highlander gathering, or the Highlander 5 gathering in Glasgow in Scotland. I would absolutely love to know if you're planning on going, because I have just seen that Sam Heughan is now an additional guest, and I mean, I'm going to be very jealous of anyone that gets to go, but I would love to know, you know, what's happening and all the information. Like, conventions are starting up again, and it's blowing my mind, because it's like, this is what I live for. I live for travel. I live for conventions. Outlander specific conventions are amazing, and I've met some of the most amazing, wonderful people through the Outlander convention. So I'm gonna love to pick anyone's brain and talk to anyone that's actually going. That would be fantastic. So I will hopefully see you all again next week for another episode, and we'll have another Bees chapter video coming up very, very shortly. So I hope you're all having a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
All that was me is gone.